No human being is wiser than Socrates. Straight answer. So a friend of Socrates went to the oracle, and I have no basis for saying that, but I always picture them sort of smirking and nudging each other. We're going to ask this really cool question, right?
Yeah. You ready?
And so she goes up, and they go up, and they say to her, "Is there anyone wiser than Socrates?" And they're expecting this really cryptic, and she said, "No human being is wiser than Socrates." Straight answer.
Wow.
So he went back, and they tell Socrates. Now, you and I, we're honest. If they said, if we got that message from the gods, we go, yeah, I always knew it, right? I always knew. He does this other thing, and this tells you how Socratic he is. He says, well, the gods can't lie. But by the way, that's one way, and he's revolutionary. The gods aren't like the ancient gods, just superheroes. The gods are like moral exemplars for Socrates, so they can't lie. But he also says, but I know I'm not wise. How can those both be true? And he turns it into this quest. So he goes and he keeps asking people, right? So somebody claims to know something, or they know what a particular virtue is. They know what courage is, and he'll ask like two generals, and he'll constantly question them, and he's trying to draw it out, and he's trying to find out. And what typically happens is this what's called a dialogue. Plato wrote, it ends with no clear answer, no clear definition. But Socrates isn't a skeptic. So
so he doesn't get a clear answer, but that's okay. The goal is the goal to get a clear answer, or just to create conversation?
Beyond that. See, the goal is to get people to take up his quest. See, so if you look at, so he's talking to these two generals, and the two generals about courage, one of them does I just know. He just speaks from his intuition, and Socrates destroys that, throws him with the contradictions of the problem. The other quotes, so the first person speaks from like a first person perspective. Well, I just know. And Socrates destroys that. And the other person speaks from this third person. Well, here's a technical definition I got from the sophists, and blah, 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 blah.
Nerd.
And Socrates destroys that. And then and Socrates can't offer definition. And you think, what was this all for? But you have to, see, in a dialogue, you have to pay attention to the drama, not just the argument. Because what the two generals say is, we want our sons to come and spend time with you and live with you, Socrates, because our sons are going to get courage from you. Socrates can't explain, he can't define courage. Courage, if you think you can put courage into a definition, you don't get it. Right? You have to get into this, not the first person, or the third person, this second person, you, us together, right? You catch it, but it's a caught truth. Remember we were talking about it? And what happens is Socrates exemplifies what it is, and he lives it in conversation with people, so that they start to catch that orientation and catch his quest.
Wow. And was that a new thing at the time, to have that sort of energy, to have that, like, for people to really start to question things like that? So
as far as we can tell, and that's why it's called the Socratic Revolution, and there doesn't seem to be any of the ancient sources that contradict this. Socrates invents, discovers. We don't have to. There's a Latin word that's much better. Inventio. It means to discover or invent. Right. He inventios, right, this way of helping people to give birth to themselves.
Wow.
So the people I work with, we've tried to reverse engineer this practice. We call it dialectic into dialogos, and we have workshops that sort of get people to take this up, and so. What we do is we'll have them do these practices around a virtue like courage, more honesty, authenticity, and what happens is they we tell them this, but they also realize it, right? The point isn't to be right about this. The point is to come into right relationship with the virtue, and that's what happens when they do these practices. People come out and go, "I'm kind of experiencing something like awe and a love." I thought I always knew what honesty was, like the technical definition or the intuition, like the two generals. But now I don't. But I'm like Socrates. So you get this right orientation, and now we go back to Socrates, because he finally resolved that paradox that he had from the gods. He realized that he was wise in that he knew when he did not know something. But not in the shallow sense that I don't know about Albanian tin production or something like that. Right. But in this sense we're talking about, which is like, I really don't know what honesty is. I have a love for it, and I want to be in the right relationship. I want to open myself